Hey, what's up guys? On this video, we are going to talk about data fetching and caching. Currently, we are on Next.js version 15, and I have done a routing part on previous video, and on today's video, we are going to talk about data fetching and caching, which is like quite a lot to cover, and I make a summary here. That's like a majority of them, and which is that you're gonna use that on your work. And we're gonna on this video we are going to cover how to fetch data by API on the server component, and how to fetch data like instead of API we're gonna do that on ORM on server side component as well, and fetch data on client side component, and how can we fetch data if we're gonna use ORM, and we're gonna cache the data like for reusing, and we are going to cover the parallel and the sequential data fetching and the data preloading as well. So without further ado, let me just take you to the demo. Okay, here. Let's see. Okay, I'm on the home page now. Let's comment that out. Okay, on the first one, I want to show you the fetch data on server component by fetching API. So on here, we have a page. We are on server component here, and we're gonna fetch data. Gonna pass the data, and I'm gonna loop through the data to show. Let me just show you the. Can you see here? On the right hand side, we have all posts with all post data with post titles. So it's quite straightforward. If we fetch your API on client side here, just like on the page before it get rendered, we fetch data. We use method. We use the API called fetch, and then we have an assign function. Assign away. We wait for the API to get the result back and render that. Okay, that's the first part here for fetching data. And let me just quickly show you a second one. And the second one is about to fetch data on server with the ORM and database. Currently, I have built a database locally, and I use the tool called Prisma, which is ORM, and we can. So let me just quickly show you my data. Just a simple database with a record of 3 records, Emma, Ben, and Michael. And what I'm doing here is, instead of the fetching API here, I use Prisma to get user table, and we find everything, all the data is from user. So once we get user here, and we're gonna loop through to show users. Let me just refresh. Can you see here? When I refresh that, it get the all users name back and show on the front end. So that's quite straightforward as well. The only difference between them is the first one is using API, and the second one is like we connect to database straight away. Okay, that's the second part. And another way of fetching data is we fetch data on client side. So on client side, we need to declare that it use client here. So by default is use server. So it's gonna be server component. So we use client to tell Next.js that is the code belong to client. So on the client, right, browser render this code, and it's gonna call use effect. It call API here. So we call the API here. We pass data. We set the data to post, and we're gonna list the post here. So let's take a look here. It's like quite simple as well, because that is very similar to the first one. We fetch data from server side. The only thing that because if we have a big project, right, and use client, so it might be rendered on first screen. It might be rendered the blank screen, because we need to wait for the data to come back. So it's gonna render loading, and gonna wait, and after the data get back, we're gonna render data. Okay, we have just introduced 3 ways of fetching data on Next.js, from API, from server-side API, from ORM server-side, and API on client-side. Okay, let's move on. So for ORM, how can we cache it? Yeah, let me see if we can go through the code here. So we have a library called unstable cache. We just leave it here for now, and then we have a Prisma client here. Okay, and then we have a page. This page that get the API called get users, called a function, and we get the user's data back. And we're gonna list the user, and on user function here, we have that's the ORM request. We get all data back from user table, and we're also gonna log here. And instead of request user table data straight away from database, we use unstable cache to wrap it up. So we put that function as first param, and we got a tag we're gonna validate. So let's try that. If I gonna go to home page, it's going to fetch user from database. If I do that again, as you can see, it doesn't print out anymore, because we have cached the data. And validate the 10 here, it means 10 seconds. So after 10 seconds gone, if we request that again, they refetch that, they call this, they get the data from database again. So you can set it like a validate like for 1 hour something, or anything like that. So once you have fetched data, it's gonna store in Next.js. It will not request to database within this time frame. So that's how we cache data on ORM and database. Okay, let's move on. Let me see what we're gonna go through next. So we have covered this. We're gonna go for reusing data cross multiple functions. Okay, to reuse data, we need to cache the data. So let me just show you here. Currently we are on user folder now, and with the dynamic route called ID. Okay, let me just comment that out. So if we look at the code here, okay, we get user. That's a API we fetch from my local server. Or we check if data is valid. and then we have a page here. We get the ID from dynamic route, and then we pass the ID to the API, and we show the user's name. So let's quickly have a look at this API here. So that's API user, let's say 1. So if we put user 1, it's gonna come back with the ID 1 and Michael, name of Michael. So if we go into user page and 1, you can see you can get the data. We can get the data back. So let me show you the API here. Okay, this is my my server here. So the server listens on 4,000 ports, port 4,000, and it listens to the path of user, and gonna call this. And whenever I have called that API on user's API, right, and it's gonna get a console. It got a log here saying get user request coming, and that go back with the ID and name. So on every time we have a request from front end, right? We request for that API, it got logged here. So in order to share data, right, we need to cache the request. So we add on the fetch API on the second param, we can say cache, force cache. We're gonna force the cache. So it means when we request on one time, the data gonna be cached forever. So if we do that, we save it, and then we restart the server to get rid of the logs. Okay, if we try one more time now, we have a force cache on. So let me see. I think that has been cached. That's been cached because because I just run this. So let me just restart dev here. So let me call the API. Oops. Users. Oh no, let me just, I need to clean the, let me do that again. So as you can see, that's we made the first request after we restart the Next.js, and we load the page of user and ID 1, and it called the API, and on server side it bring out get user request coming, and if we do that again, it will not show. It's not gonna log. It doesn't have no more logs because that we have cached the data here. So that's the one way to cache data by using the force cache when we request. Okay, let me show you the second way to do it. So second way to cache data is, previously we are using the API, right? And for this example, we're gonna use the ORM, like Prisma. Like we're going to go through the code, we have a Prisma client, not found this link. Okay, we have a request here. This request is like to get the data from user table, and that's gonna log out the like a user requesting. On the page, we take the ID and we pass the ID to get user method that, and I'm gonna show user's name and user's name and user's email. So on here, right? So every time we call get user, this user requesting is gonna print it out. Okay, and let me see. Let me just get rid of this cache here, so you guys can do a comparison here. So, okay, let me get rid of that. So we're on user. Okay, we get the user's name and user's email. And we have a log here, say user requesting, because we have like 2 requests here. Like if we have like another request, that's gonna be 3 requests. As you can see, that is 3 requests. And if we don't want that many requests, we can use the cache. So so when we use cache, right, you use cache, that's the method from React. We wrap our request, we pass our request as a prompt to cache. It's gonna cache the result. So let me request that again. As you can see, we only have 1 request log. Even I do like many, they only shows like 1 request because that has been cached. So that's 2 ways to cache data. One way is to use force cache one on Fetch API when we make requests. Another one is that we can use the method provided by React, and we can pass our request and request to database like ORM as a prompt to cache. But this is not global. This is like let's say here. Okay, normally we're gonna print out like 2 times, right? But I only print out 1 time. But if we go into home page, oops, I need to load something on home page. Let me just show you here. So we are having like a 1 request here, right? That's like because we have cached it, and we're gonna go to home, and then when we go back to users, that it print out again because it hasn't been cached globally. You can say that it's like a partial cached only on this page. If you're browsing on this page, like doesn't matter how many requests you do, it's only gonna do once, right? But if you go to another page and then you come back again, it's gonna log again. It's gonna make a request again. So this is, we say that cache, that's like for partial cache, and the cache for force cache, that only gonna be run 1 times. When you deploy your project, it's gonna be cached completely. Okay, that's 2 ways of sharing data across different functions. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, we've done that. And the next one I want to talk about is the parallel and the sequential data fetching. Okay. Let me just bring out the demo here. Okay, we have a sequential data fetching. Let's take a look at this code first. Okay, we have two API requests here, and we have a page that take ID that requests the API to get the data back, and that bring out data's result, the artist name, and we have a component called playlist that take artist ID here, and that make another request, and that make a list of the playlist. So we have two API requests. So two API requests will be when we render this page, right? And this, for example, this artist is gonna take few seconds, and when that's done, and it gonna show rest of them. It's gonna show artist name, and we're gonna wait for this get artist playlist come back, the data to come back, and they're gonna show loadings initially. Then after that, it's gonna show the data. So let's take a look the artist list. Let's show the get artist. So get artist here. I just mock a API here, and it bring out the log get artist request, and we just fake it for 3 seconds. Then gonna get the artist name and ID, whatever user passing. And same as get artist playlist, we get a log here, and then we're gonna wait for another 3 seconds. So, and then we're gonna return the playlist. So in that scenario, that's gonna take around 6 seconds. That's gonna take 6 seconds in total. In the first 3 seconds, after the first 3 seconds, it's gonna show artist name and loading. And after another 3 seconds, it's gonna show playlist. Okay, let's take a look. I'm going to page artist. Okay. So you can see we are artist, and after another 3 seconds, it's gonna show playlist. On first 3 seconds, loading, and I get a result back, and after 3 seconds, that's gonna call like a sequential of data fetching. If you have like 2 or 3 or more fetching, right? They are like they do it like one by one. Is that they are queuing. So you have to wait for first one to be done in order to get a request on second one, which is kind of like time consuming. And in order to optimize it, we have parallel data fetching. So let me just show you the code here. Parallel data fetching here. So let's take a look here. So we have two API requests, and that's gonna return a promise here. That's a promise. We just this is the request we just assigned to the variable called artist data and the playlist data, and then we put that in all promise. So basically these two promise, right? We're gonna call them at the same time. They're gonna make a request at the same time. And whenever them have done, right? Both of them have done. They're gonna show the data. So if I can show you here, as you can see, it's much faster now, because normally it takes 6 seconds, and now it takes like 3 seconds, because these two requests, they evoke at the same time, as we have here, as we have a log here. So we make a request. Can you see that's 2 requests being sent out? And this pretty much safe compared to the sequential data fetching. It's like it's gonna save half of the time. Like if we compare, if I comment that out, sequential data fetching. Can you see that when we have we fetching here, okay? Right, if we fetch here, so I get artist requesting, and after 3 seconds, it's a get artist playlist. Okay, that's the two of the fetching type when it's the parallel and the sequential. So normally parallel, that in this scenario, parallel gonna save half of the time on requesting, instead of waiting instead of waiting previous request. If they invoke it a parallel request, they invoke the function at the same time. Okay, let's move on to next one. The final one is called preloading data. Okay, let's take a look here. Preloading data. Okay, for preloading data, so let me see here, example here. We have request here, 2 methods, 2 requests. So we have a item, a component called item, and we have a page here. We are on items page now, and with the dynamic route that take IDs and that get IDs, because this is a sign we need to use a wait here in order to get params. And in order to load this page, right, we're gonna say that's a asynchronous task. We need to wait for the 3 seconds. When the available is true, we're gonna render the component called item. Okay, let's check items, take IDs. As you can see, it takes a long time, 3 seconds, and then when after 3 seconds, it's gonna render the item component. Item component, that's a request here. That's take another 3 seconds. If you can see here, it says sleeping now for 3 seconds. After that, get items request. This function get invoked, and that get a item back. So in order to optimize it, and we can use preload, like preload data. So we wrap get item, that get item request as preload. So on here, we just preload get item, and that's not gonna return anything. It just invoke function and do nothing, and I wait for the 3 seconds. Then it's gonna render the component here, item component. It's gonna wait for another 3 seconds, because this is gonna be super fast, because we call this get item before sleep. So this is like gonna take like 9 seconds. That 3 seconds, that 3 seconds, that's 3 seconds. That's gonna take 9 seconds. But instead of that, we can use the call or method called cache. If you watch earlier video, we know the function called cache. So we create another function can get item cached. That's exactly like get item function, but it's being cached. So like this, we have preload, we have a sleep. That's normally 3 seconds. That's 3 seconds, and that's like when we get called when we run the item component, right? Get items being called because it's being cached, because like we invoke this function before we call sleep. So normally it takes 6 seconds, and now it's much faster. As you can see, it's super fast now. It's not super fast, it's like much faster compared to previous one, because this is roughly only take 3 seconds, because the get item cache method and the sleeping method are calling pretty much at the same time, because we are not get item cache, we are not waiting to get response, and while we are in the middle of sleep, that get item request may already have done and been cached, and when we run the item on here, because it has been cached, and so we don't need to wait another 3 seconds to get data back. Okay, so that's the one way to cache data, like to cache data. Okay, and next, let's move on for the final one. Let me see. This is not final one. This is the part 2 here, with another way to cache data. Let me just take a look. Okay, this here. Okay, we have a pretty much similar code compared to previous. That's the sleep. That's the sleep here, and that's item component. The item component that's going to be wait for 3 seconds as well. So instead, instead of this scenario here, we call a request here. We call our local API here, item. Let's just quickly check out the item here. So item that get back a name and ID. So compared to the previous one, we use the method cache from React. So in this case, we use force cache. So we use force cache. It's gonna be cached globally. So let's test it out. The sleep. Actually, we still can get the data back, and let me just show you the next. You can see here that's the get items request coming for one time, and can you see that even we render that multiple time, there is only one get items coming, because that's being cached. we can also use like this. We can also use like wrap that in the preload as well. Like this. Because preload, that's only going to, oops. Like this. Preload is like they only gonna be run once. And when it runs, right, it's not gonna block any requests after that, and it also gonna cache the data. So when we need the data, right, when we need the data, and we just get it from cache memory. Okay, we have like two ways of the cache to preloading data, just to bring the we just to call the request, and without blocking any other request, and also we need to save that in the cache. Okay, that's pretty much for today's video, and let's summary that we have like learned how to do some we have done some demo of how to fetch API on server side, how to do that on the ORM to connect to database, and we also show the demo of how to request API on client side on use effect hook, and we cache the ORM, and we reuse data. We cache data in order to reuse that in different functions or different pages, and we compare two difference between parallel and sequential data fetching, and in some of the cases, parallel data fetching can save like maybe half of the time, maybe more than that. And we preloading is like we fetch data before we actually use it without blocking any request, and we also save the data when data come back. Okay, that's all for today's video, guys. I'm gonna upload the code on GitHub, and I'm gonna leave the link on description. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I see you guys on next time. Bye for now.